I'm Lisa Haisha. Welcome to the Legacy Series. Today on my couch, I have Neale Donald Walsch, and it's so exciting to have him here because I'm a huge fan of his. Conversations with God, who he is the author of, changed my life. It's something that I refer to time and time again, and he's led a fascinating life, and he's someone who takes a lot of chances, risks. He puts it all out there. You have one life, so he's full in. So let's learn about him and his journey. Hi.
Hi, Lisa. It's nice to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, you're welcome. I find you fascinating because so many people are so afraid to speak their truth or to put themselves out there for criticism. And you've had your fair share of criticism. And I think if we all are afraid of what everyone else thinks or feels, nothing will get done. And I think your message is so strong because you don't preach. You share what, from my understanding, you share your truth from what happened to you. And you're not trying to sell anything or sell a theory. You're not thinking your way is the Bible and you don't want all these followers and you're not a guru. But when I told people I'm interviewing you, everyone said, oh, he's such a guru, he's my guru, and his book is like my Bible. And I'm going, oh, that's the antithesis of what Neale feels about himself. So just share a little bit about who is Neale and how did you get on this journey? And
let's talk first about truth, because you brought that up at the outset, and I think it takes strength and courage to not tell the truth. Rather than to tell the truth about yourself and what you're thinking and what's true for you. Because when we don't tell the truth, we wind up trapping ourselves in two ways. One, we're hiding out. No one can know who we really are. And so it gets to be an extraordinary experience of wondering whether people really like you, much less love you. Because you realize, no one else knows, but you know that they don't know who you are. So you begin to wonder after a while, who are they falling in love with, or who are they liking? Are they liking my persona that I've put out there, and in which I never tell the truth about what I'm really thinking, or are they liking the real me? The second problem with that is that with not telling the truth is that it takes great courage, because you're going to get caught sooner or later. If you're out there long enough,
yes,
somebody's going to catch you in an untruth. And they're going to bring it up. And this happens all the time, and we see people of fame and people of who are known widely get caught that way, and they have to then pay the price of losing whatever favor they might have had with the public, for that matter, with even their friends and family.
yes,
Because they've been uncovered, as it were. So I think, why not uncover from the beginning? So then, because everyone knows ultimately that the emperor is wearing no clothes anyway.
Of course.
We can't kid anybody about that. So I have found that, but I found something else, Lisa, if I may say. It's been my experience that people are very accepting of the truth, other people. I have not had to summon any courage to speak my mind or to say what I think or to tell the truth about myself or my views, because most people are pretty tolerant. Even those who disagree with you will say, well, I don't agree with you at all, but at least you're straight up and I know where you're coming from. So I have found great acceptance of truth-telling. I have found it to be a wonderful experience. And Conversations with God told me that there were 5 levels of truth-telling. The first level was to tell the truth to yourself about yourself. Now that's where it can be interesting, to tell the truth to yourself about yourself. Because, for the first 25 years of my life, of my adult life, I lied to myself about me, about what it was really like to be me and how I really was with other people and what was really true. So it wasn't until I was around 35 or 40 years old that I began telling the truth to myself about myself. That's when I discovered what I was just saying to you a minute ago, about how easy it was once you just decide to uncover and let it be what it is. The second level of truth-telling is to tell the truth to yourself about another. That's also difficult because I didn't want to admit to myself, even though no one else could even hear me or knew what I was thinking, I didn't want to admit to myself how I was feeling about another person, good or bad. Became startlingly clear to me when many, many years ago now, I was in a relationship with a young woman, and it had turned in a way I didn't really choose, but I didn't want to feel that I was no longer in love with that person. My mind was even saying to me, how can you feel that way? You know, you can't. She's a perfectly lovely human being, a perfectly wonderful person. So I had to fight internally to tell myself the truth. You know, it's just not what I'm thinking I want to, experience for the rest of my life. So we're not going to do this. It was a very seminal moment in which I finally agreed with myself that perhaps I need to tell the truth just to myself about another. The third level of truth-telling that I've been aware of is when I tell the truth about myself to another. The fourth level of truth-telling is when I tell my truth about another to that other. And the fifth level of truth-telling that I've learned about is when I tell the truth about everything to everyone, whatever the question is. And that's where I've been residing now for about 35 years or so. Just let it all hang out.
And
Just
what
tell
were
the
the
truth.
repercussions of that?
Well, as I said, I had more friends, more loved ones, more people who felt closer to me than I ever did before.
And I think the key to that also is connection. So many people come to me, I'm a life coach, and they say, I don't feel connected to anything. I don't feel a connection to the universe, to God, to myself, to any other human being. And it's because they're not telling the truth. I think when you connect to you fully, what you're saying, and you get to know yourself really well, then you'll know who a real friend is, and people will connect to you because they're connecting to a real person. People could feel a false person right away and just they're not interested because what they're...
You can't even live your truth. You can't
No.
live your truth if you haven't decided what it is and then announced it. How can you step into
Yes.
the living of your own truth? So you're just a walking lie, really. And it's a difficult way to live. It takes a lot of courage to do that. I wouldn't recommend it.
Right, I don't
It
either.
never turns out well. It doesn't turn out well. As our mutual friend, Dr. Phil would say, how's that working for you?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, conversations with God, what inspired that? Where were you in your life? And
Well, nothing
where...
in my life was working, Lisa. I didn't mean to interrupt you,
Okay.
but it's a very simple story. My life was falling apart. My
How
career.
old were you?
How old was I?
30s, 40s?
No. When I had the conversation with God experience, I was closer to 50. I was about 49.
Okay.
So it was at a time in my life when I would have thought by 49 or 50 that I had at least, if nothing else, gotten my game together. And at least I had things handled on the relationship front or the work front or something. But in fact, it was a time when everything in my life was falling apart. My career had reached a dead end. My relationship with my significant other was crumbling right in front of my face, and my health was going downhill as well, rapidly. So, nothing was working. Not any one of the things you'd like to, could almost tolerate this if these two were in place, or you could tolerate that if these two were in place. But I had my health, my relationship, and my career all at the same time just fall apart. And I sat on the couch one night at 4:30 in the morning. I got up in the middle of the night. I couldn't understand, what does it take to make life work? What have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? And, what are the rules? Somebody tell me the rules. I'll play, I promise, I'll play. Just give me the rule book. I know I can play by the rules, but don't change the rules every 5 minutes also, if you please. So I was very, very angry about how my life had turned out. And I was, at the age of 50, so furious that I couldn't sleep. And I woke up one morning and found a yellow legal pad on the coffee table, and I picked it up and I wrote a very angry letter to God, just getting my anger out. And I wrote those exact words. What does it take to make life work? I was really furious. And I remember thinking to myself on that couch at 4:25 in the morning, either you give me some answers here, or I'm done. I'm out. I'm not willing to play. I'm not willing to play.
Were you suicidal?
That's what I'm trying to tell you. Yeah, I was saying to God,
Okay.
give me some answers or I'm done. I don't want to play. I'm out. I don't want to play. This is no fun. It's more work than it is fun. And I was done with the whole thing. I don't think that I would have ended my life that night, but I was absolutely in that frame of mind of,
But it was in the realm of possibility.
oh my gosh,
one
yeah,
day.
absolutely.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
through, I'm finished.
Okay.
Either I find some answers here relatively quickly, or I have no reason to go on. Zero reason to go on. Like this. And I heard a voice over my right shoulder, right over here. It was a voice in the room. And so there I was sitting on my couch. What are the rules? Somebody tell me the rules. I'll play. Just give me the rule book. And while you're at it, don't change them every 5 minutes. And I was really, really livid about how everything was turning out. And then I heard a voice over my right shoulder, just as clear as we're hearing each other now, a physical present voice. And the voice said very quietly, do you want answers to all of these questions? Or are you just venting? And of course, I turned around, I was shocked, I was scared. Who's in my house? At 4:20 in the morning, there was no one there. Then I was really scared, like, wow, this is going from bad to worse here. Now I'm hearing voices. But in that next moment, as I was moving into that feeling of fearfulness, like I could have sworn I just heard somebody back there. In that very next moment, I was overcome with a feeling of peace and tranquility and serenity, and I almost want to say inner wholeness, a sense of, utter safety. That it was just utterly safe to be where I was right then. And I wept at the peace and joy of it. Just sat there and then I thought to myself, well, you know what? I am venting, but if somebody could give me answers, I guess this is why I sat down with this yellow legal pad writing these crazy questions. I really would like to have answers if you had them. And I was given the answers to those questions. And the answers came to me then, it was almost as if I could characterize it, as if that voice kind of moved into my mind. I was having the experience of listening to someone else give me the answers to my questions. And the answers that I received brought up more questions, of course. So I would ask those questions and get an answer immediately, and ask those questions and get an answer immediately. And before I knew it, I was involved in a non-paper dialogue, which I chose to call, after it was all said and done, Conversations with God. But I'll tell you, Lisa, that before I could even finish asking a question, I'd get the answer to it.
And that never happened to you before?
No, nothing like that.
So when you wrote it down, what made you think, oh, I'm going to turn this into a book, and how did you even go about that process?
I didn't intend it to be a book. I was journaling in my private journal.
Yeah, but I'm saying once you wrote it.
Well, what happened was, in the middle of the writing, I of course began to wonder, because I should explain that this went on for many, many months, not just that one night. That is, I would be awakened most nights at 4:25 in the morning. I would just wake up as if someone was tapping me on the shoulder, and I'd be led almost by the nose, in a sense, out to that yellow legal pad, which I had taken to leaving on my coffee table. And I went out to the store a few days later when I realized I had written out the entire pad, handwritten. I got more of them and more of them. Before I knew it, I had 6 or 8 of those yellow legal pads filled with this daily experience that I was having, like someone was visiting me every day and inviting me to ask whatever question I wanted to ask, and I was able to receive the answers in that way. Somewhere in the middle of that process, it said, this will one day become a book. And I thought, now I got you. Because that's a measurable outcome. All the rest that I was receiving was theoretical, conceptual in nature. Wonderful stuff, but it could be true or it could not be true. There's no way to know. It was just conceptual. But this was a statement of fact. This will one day become a book. And I thought, we'll see about that. I can measure that. What's fascinating about it was I knew there was no chance in the world for that to happen. First of all, publishers don't publish books by unknown or unpublished authors in any event, and certainly not a book by an unpublished author who claims to be talking directly to God. I mean, this is insane. So I knew that there was no publisher in the country that was going to pick up that book and say, stop the presses, this guy's talking to God. It was ridiculous. So I thought, I got him, and we'll find out. I'm obviously making this all up. But in fact, I sent it to 5 publishers, and not 20 and not 30. I wasn't really, trying hard. I just sent it to 5 publishers, and one of the 5 called me. And it was all handwritten, of course, but I had a wonderful lady keyboard it on a computer, and we sent the manuscript to 5 publishers. And this man called me, Robert Friedman from Hampton Roads, and he said, we really love this stuff. Tell me about this. What's happening? And I explained to him, just as I'm explained to you, I said, look, this is just my private journal. I just sent it because I'm daring it to be right. It says this will become a book one day. And he said, well, you know what? It is going to be a book. We want to publish this. And I couldn't believe it. Nor did I believe it after it was published, because they raced it to print. They didn't just take a year or 6 months to put it into a book form. They put it into a book form in about 4 or 5 months, which is very fast in the publishing business. And after it was on the street, it became an instant bestseller.
How did they market it? With you being an unknown and the topics a little controversial?
They did something very clever. They sent it to every church in the country that they could get an address on. And mostly they were what you'd want to call, I guess, New Thought churches, but churches nonetheless, are organized religions, and the churches, and they invited the ministers, read it and see what you think. If you think it's worthwhile to pass along to your congregation, please do so. So they gave free copies to all those ministers, and the ministers loved it. And the book wound up being on the church book tables in the back of the church hall, all over the country. And so congregants began picking it up. Well, once the book got into the hands of actual people, not just ministers, but regular folks, it took off because they would tell other people about it. You got to read this book. You can't believe this book. And
yes.
And so many people heard about it, and many people wound up buying it. And before we knew it, we had made. Gee, this sounds so self-aggrandizing. I don't like to talk about this the way I am. I'm realizing I'm sounding very boastful, but you're asking a question. But the book wound up on the New York Times bestseller list relatively quickly, but 9 weeks after it was out. And
so from being in this state of you might want to commit suicide, you're hopeless, to this.
Yeah, and the book stayed on the bestseller list for
Yes.
2.5 years.
I was one of the people who said, let me buy 20 copies and give it to all my friends.
Yeah, for 137
Yes.
weeks, and it
Yes.
wound up being translated into 37 languages.
Yes.
So suddenly, overnight, just as you're characterizing, I was like, whoa, let me see if I have this straight. My private middle-of-the-night journaling has turned into a global bestseller. And it was an interesting experience.
Yes.
Because I was,
I'm sure.
And everybody wanted to talk to me about it. Larry King and Oprah and the Today Show, and
Your life turned around.
yeah,
completely.
and I'm not bragging about that, because actually it was scary. People were thinking of me in a different way, and they thought that I had a direct line to God, and they needed to listen to my every word, and so it was a very interesting chapter of my life.
Yeah, from my experience when I read it, I didn't put any of that pressure on you. What I loved about it, that it was so raw, and you were able to articulate questions that so many people have, and regardless of your answer, it didn't matter. You were able to touch the core of each and every one of us who read your book, and even think of our own questions to ask, and your answers were wonderful, what God said or whatever you channeled. And even if it wasn't perfect, it gave you something to work with, of going, oh, I could work with this. And it could help open the doors to where people were stuck. And that's what I really liked about the book. It was a wonderful, workbook. Like you're saying, it's when people aren't that real with each other. People aren't that honest. People don't go that deep. And you did, and you showed that. You showed your soul to the world. And I think people connected with that.
I think it was a case of James Thurber's Everyman.
Yes.
And so people, as you said, in many cultures, not just the American culture, but all over the world. I mean, the book was read really everywhere.
Yes.
In 37 languages, as I mentioned. And it turned out that I had an experience, in terms of the questions I was asking and the frustrations I was having with life, that was very common. Very common human experience.
Yes.
So nobody could read that book and not see it themselves, at least in some of it.
Of course.
This is exactly what I've been. And so you're right, that's what happened. And that's what turned the book into a bestseller, because it spoke for I want to say the human race.
So you actually believe that you die, you meet whatever God is or the essence of God, and you have a choice to come back down.
Yep.
But there is a heaven. So what about who's bad? How do you know who's bad
There's
and
no
who's
such thing as
good?
bad.
What about what's going on in our world today?
The-
Terrorists and killings. What is that about?
Lisa, it's about immaturity and it's about steps on the pathway toward the evolution of a species. Do we say that a 6-year-old or a 9 or 12-year-old is bad because they can't quite get their multiplication tables? They keep making mistakes on the test.
I think there's a big difference there.
No, but metaphorically,
Yeah.
Stay with the metaphor. I know
Okay.
it's a big difference, of course.
Big leap.
I understand,
Yeah.
but metaphorically speaking, if a child makes a horrible mistake for that matter, let's just go to this. Let's go to the level of terror. You want to go to the level of horror? Let's go to the level of horror. We actually let people go who commit heinous crimes. We let them walk out of the courtroom free. We call them innocent by reasons of diminished capacity. And every legal system on the planet has a provision for innocent by reason of insanity. Now, if our legal system has a provision for that, what do you think God would have in terms of what provisions God puts in place? God realizes that, to use your question about the horror and the terror in the world today, that we are acting insanely, that we are innocent by reason of diminished capacity. And let me explain to you how diminished our capacity is. It's been said in a couple of books I've read in a few places that if you took the age of the earth and overlaid it on a calendar year for purposes of scale.
Yes, I've read this in your book.
I'm going to say it for the folks who
Yes.
have not seen it.
Yes.
So folks, forget she's here, I'll just tell it to you. You took the earth,
Yes, it's fascinating.
the life of the earth, the age of the earth, and put it on a calendar, a 1-year calendar for purposes of scale, so we could understand things better. The first form of single-cell life did not appear on the earth until the end of February. More sophisticated life forms, more complex life forms, fishes in the sea, did not appear until the end of November. Dinosaurs did not occur on the earth until December 10th. They did not disappear from the earth until December 25th. Humanoids, not our species, but mammals walking on 2 legs, didn't appear until 1145 on December 31st. And the whole of human history can be put into the last 60 seconds of the year. That's how young we are as a species relative to the age of the earth. Forget about the cosmos, just the earth. So God sees us, that his life understands that we are infants. We are like the 2-year-old who crashes the milk on the table, spills the milk, reaching for the chocolate cake. We want the chocolate cake so bad that we aren't thinking what we're doing, and we actually, ruin the party by making a mess of the whole table. But parents don't say to that child, go to your room for the rest of your life.
Well, what's the purpose of life then? What's the meaning and purpose? Why are we here?
To announce and to declare, to express and to fulfill, to become and to experience who you really are. Life exists as this glorious opportunity for that which is to know itself experientially, so that we use each moment in life and every moment of every lifetime in all the species, in all the when-wheres of existence, allowing, could I put it this way, God to know itself in, as, and through that which is, including you and me. So we are God's choice to know itself in every conceivable manifestation. How we choose as individual aspects of God to express that is where free choice comes in. Since we have an unlimited number of choices to make, they've all already been made. See, this has all already happened, but it's like watching the movie over again. It's over and over and over again. People say, well, if it's already happened, what's the point of it? I say, wait a minute, do you have any movies on your shelf, on the DVD shelf, that you have watched more than once? because it's your favorite film. So every year, like for me, it's a Wonderful Life, Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah,
I
love
watch
that
it
too.
every Christmas.
Yes.
I don't care how I know the dialogue by heart. I don't care. I just want to watch it again. I want to watch it again. It's that wonderful, and it's aptly called "It's a Wonderful Life." Well, God is the producer, if I could really speak metaphorically, of that film, of a wonderful film called It's a Wonderful Life. And she's going to watch it again and again and again, and he never gets tired of it, nor do the actors or the players in the film itself. So the purpose of life is for us to decide from moment to moment, who do I choose to be now? Wow. And how do I want that to be made manifest in my reality? And that is, in fact, what life exists to allow us to do. It's the purpose of life as I understand it.
So you feel we choose to be here? Is this
Oh,
a
there's no
choice?
question.
Okay.
Everything is free choice. Nothing happens against your will. Such a thing would be impossible. If you are a manifestation of divinity, nothing could happen against your will. You couldn't lift your little finger unless you wanted to. That is, if you did not want to, you couldn't do it. So, and nor could anybody make you do it. So everything that happens in accordance with your own will. As Conversations with God put it in Book 1, see the perfection. Or as my lovely friend Byron Katie would like to say, loving what is. Don't argue with life. It's happening perfectly, just the way all the players are choosing for it to happen. And so when you stop arguing with life, as Katie would say, stop arguing with life, or as wonderful Dafri John put it, and I thought an extraordinarily striking and poignant sentence. Dafri John simply said, cease all againstness. And when I first read that in a book, I was,
I love that. Yeah.
cease all againstness. Wow. How do you put the whole game in 3 words? And my life changed when I stopped arguing with life and stopped wondering about the process or asking questions like why or how come, and just let myself move freely into the experience of full and joyous creation, whatever was occurring, even in the so-called not so nice moments. And it's amazing, Lisa, how that can affect your day-to-day experience.
I agree.
Like I might be having a not such nice moment with my spouse. I have a lovely, lovely woman that I'm married to, and she's just a sweetheart. But like all people who live together, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, sometimes there are moments that don't go quite as well as you would like. But when I encounter one of those moments with my sweetheart, I just give myself permission to look across the room, and I get to ask myself, wow, who am I now in relationship to this? And then I ask myself life's magic question. And what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? And what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? As I sit down to eat, and what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? And as I sit down to have this chat with you, and what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? If I can't answer the question clearly, I don't do it. I simply don't do it. But when
That's a wonderful way to live.
in that experience with my wife, and what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? This has to do with a moment of creating myself as I choose to be in relationship to the experience called things aren't going well. So I have a choice to continue with that energy or to just stop everything, get up, walk across the kitchen, hold her in my arms and say, you know what, darling? I love you more than life itself. And I refuse to have this moment come between that feeling between you and me. I'm simply not going to do it. If I've done something to hurt you or offend you or upset you or frustrate you or annoy you, I am so, so sorry. Tell me how you feel about that. Let's see if we can repair it. But let's make sure that we stay and keep intact who we are in relationship to each other. And my wife and I have that agreement. She has that same agreement with me. We have an agreement we had since the first day we knew each other intimately, which was, if ever there's a disagreement between us, can we make this bargain? Never leave the room. Promise you'll never leave the room, no matter how heated the moment becomes. And to the degree that you possibly can, promise that you'll never even leave my eyes. Keep looking at me. Because it's virtually impossible to look into my eyes for more than a few seconds, or me into yours, without falling in love again. Because the eyes are the windows of the soul. And that's when we know who we really are. And then we simply choose to express that or not. as the case may be, whatever we choose.
Well, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh gosh, I don't know that I think in terms of legacy, but if I had to answer the question spontaneously, I would say, he helped the world change its mind about God.
I love that. And you have. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking
I
me.
really appreciate it. So much wisdom.
Well, it's been very sweet to be here. Thank you for asking me.
You're welcome.